welcome everyone. It's Jason Lay from Oracle here. I've got Avi Miller, also from Oracle. We're going to be running the session using open source on Oracle Cloud this evening. So welcome, Avi.
Hello.
Welcome to the World Innovation Hackathon.
It is amazing to be here. I'm really excited.
So just let's just get into it. Let's get through it. Let's actually provide some value to the community. So tell me a little bit about yourself and especially your open source journey. From
the whole thing?
Started, part of it, and as well as how that's appeared within Oracle.
Okay, well, I've been an open source developer for more years than most of your hackathon people have been alive, probably around 20-ish years. I've been at Oracle for 13 of those. I joined Oracle 2000. Oh, you can do the math. It was interesting. I joined Oracle from a very small open source development company in Melbourne. And before I joined Oracle, the biggest company I'd worked for was 26 people. And I knew all of them. And then I got headhunted and said, I'm going to go play with the big boys. And it's weird coming from, I've always been the open source guy who worked at Oracle, not the Oracle guy who works with open source. And I've spent most of those 13 years as an Oracle Linux product manager. So working with the Linux team, working primarily in the Linux team for many, many years. And this year I actually transitioned. I joined the Oracle Cloud team and I'm part of the developer adoption team. So my role now is to make it easier for developers, open source or not, but I have a thing for open source, but it's to make it easier to use OCI, to use our services, to onboard, to integrate. That's my mission eventually. But yeah, that's kind of what I've done.
So just I'm conscious of the acronyms here. So
yeah.
OCI being
Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Yes, you're going to hear OCI a lot. It means Oracle Cloud, but Oracle Cloud Infrastructure is way too many syllables. So OCI is quicker. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So in terms of that experience, you would have seen a lot of ways that people use open source in corporates.
Yes.
And especially and one of the things that I'd be interested here is that we're going to have a lot of students, we're going to have a lot of young graduates coming in, and most of the reasons why that people do come to the hackathon is to actually learn. So in terms of what you've seen, how important and how do you see open source play in that learning experience?
It's nowadays it's fundamental. I mean, I have my open source communities are my closest probably communities. I've moved a lot in my life. I grew up in South Africa. I moved to Australia when I was in my early 20s. And wherever I go, the first community I look for is my open source community, because we have a sort of a shared worldview a lot of the times. And those community members are so broad, from a inclusivity and diversity perspective, and they're always learning. One of the lovely things I like about open source is they're always learning, or they're always teaching. I find I've matured from somebody who learns with open source to somebody who teaches with open source. And there's so much that you can break. I'm one of those learners that the way I learn how something works is I break it into pieces, and then I see if I can put it back together. The value here is that you get a community of like-minded folks who want to see how the world works, and they do that through experimentation. They do that through joint tasks or joint goal building. Like, I've seen open source communities that have built I was involved with enabling people with disability to interact with like voice assistants. How do I make my Alexa move forward and back if I can't move forward and back was one of them. And then going down to robots that, we in Australia, we've got some amazing autonomous vehicle developers, trained in those folks who make robots that just can sort themselves out. They can go into caves, they can go into dark spaces that we can't fit. The scope of what folks are building with open source and the way they're doing it is vast, and that's all starts we're seeing a huge sort of increase in learning around students and stuff. It all starts with kids, or I don't want to say kids, but anybody under 30 for me, by the way, now as a kid. But kids and teachers engaging, and they get all the tools they need. There's nothing's behind a paywall, or nothing's hidden away from you. You can see exactly where the sausage is made or how, and you get to manipulate it, and you get to modify it, and you get to change it to your needs, and you get to implement it wherever you want, and you get to install it as much as you like. If the camera look down, I've got so many Raspberry Pis on my desk that are probably one of the best learning tools to come out in the last 10 years or so. That it's, yeah, I know, hang on, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 6. And they're all doing stuff. They're all doing different stuff. They're all whirring away at me as well. You can hear the fans. But that was a huge step for education. Just being able to give folks not just software, which we've been doing for a while, but now you can hack on hardware. And there's a CPU that came out, an actual open source SoC came out with the full thing. And I'm like, this is the first onboarding and bring up of a completely open source hardware platform. And the possibilities are endless. So I'm very excited. But yes, did that answer a question?
It's definitely vast in terms of that space and the opportunities to actually, I can see it, as you say before, into the schools and to get younger. And I do see in some of the UN reports that there is a linkage around employability, around, I suppose, in a broader success area around humanities and that learning opportunity. That does play a role.
And it's global. One of the things that we're seeing now as well is that it used to be very US centric. You know, the tech was and came out of the US, but now we're seeing the biggest growth coming out of Africa and Southeast Asia and countries, even in South America. We're seeing a almost normalization of where tech emerges. So what used to be a very sort of American-centric view on the world is now changing. I was reading the GitHub's report for 2020 for their sort of social and community reports, and the largest growth in terms of users has come out of Nigeria and Pakistan, and all of those areas where there's fantastic growth in diversity. So we're going to see a lot more of global development, and that then spreads. The nice thing about open source is there is no one country that owns it. There's no one jurisdiction or culture or anything like that. So we're going to see some really fun and amazing tools coming out that have, sort of a reach we don't see. I'm kind of unique. I grew up in South Africa, so I have that kind of background, and I'm in Australia now, so I have the view from Australia. But those two, I have very different needs as a population or as a location, and being able to see the growth of sort of involvement and commercial growth coming out of those countries is fantastic, because I want to see a globalization in this effort. I want to see what comes out of these new emerging markets and how they can teach me how better to use world resources and stuff like that. So it's very exciting from a sort of a diversity perspective.
Yeah, I think even this hackathon is actually quite an interesting environment to be in, because with some of the previous ones I've seen, that we've actually had teams that cross 7 time zones.
As somebody who's had to schedule a meeting across 7 time zones, that's never fun. I'm always the one who's getting up at 3 a.m. for those meetings. So I applaud you for getting up for that early. But yes, it's cool.
And to have these, we all talk about teams that are diverse, right? So in a hackathon sense, having a hipster, hustler, the hacker, and the hound, which is more the research side, then having that in there. And I actually was just talking to a mentor just before that I don't do the tech stuff, but I'm deep in health. I do clinical health. I've done things in education in different areas. We need people like you to come in to help, because that's actually part of bringing that diversity in. And I see similar things around the open source.
Yeah, and the same thing happened at home. So I'm a tech. I'm a nerd, a geek. You can see all the Lego behind me. I'm massively nerdy. My husband works for a mental health promotion agency, so he's deep into sort of promoting mental health awareness and strategies around depression and anxiety and all those sorts of things. So I went to him and said, "Oh, the new thing is coming up with Oracle. We're sponsoring," and he goes, "Oh, I know all about this." And he's deeply involved. And I'm like, so I have a lot of input from him coming back and saying, "This is what is involved. We've been doing this for years, and this is why it's important." And so, I was excited to be a part of this to begin with, and now I'm super excited because it's it's very rare that somebody in tech gets to change the world.
Yeah.
You know, there's only one Elon Musk, and I'm not him. And so it's very rare that you get a chance to mentor or guide or just be involved or watch. You know, seeing the next Bill Gates or the next Steve Ballmer emerge would be fantastic, or helping, or so that's pretty cool.
So coming back to open source and to the event, so how do you think Oracle and Oracle Cloud actually makes it easier to learn around open source?
We have quite a few things. The first one I want to just call out, not just for the hackathon, but in general, is we have an always free tier. So you can spin up instances, you can get access to data, you can get access to services, and we never charge you. And you can just keep them running. So they're not one of those, you have to do it within 30 days or you have to do it within X amount of hours or whatever. You've got time. You can come and go as your life allows, which I think is really nice. We have lots of data services. One of the things that's always struck me interestingly for the hackathon is Oracle does big data and we do big data pretty well. And we've got all of these things to allow you to get the information you need from big data, whether it's AI, machine learning, whether it's all those kind of map reducing and TensorFlowing and all those fun things that take huge amounts of data and make them small. That stuff's all there for you. So plug in the numbers, plug in the data, get the results. The learning is driven by you. The learning is where you want to take your usage. I'm going to be honest, I don't think there's anything that we do beyond making it as accessible as possible, but we also give you the tools. We don't hide any of our enterprise stuff away. It's all on our cloud. You can go and play it and use it, and it's limited to one person, limited in scope, but you get access to it and you get access to see how the stuff works, and you get access to the types of big data work that you'll see in hopefully in your commercial and your career. I want everybody to be successful. And we've got developers and subject matter experts and folks that sit out on GitHub and other places that support the code and support the plugins that are here to help you as well. So I'm one of them, so I'm going to help you at least.
Actually, I do find it interesting with the Oracle GitHub repositories and what's there in terms of a lot of the tools and a lot of the one of the things I've been doing more recently is probably more so around Terraform and the Oracle Resource Manager. And most of the things that we've done and packaged up within our cloud, actually, they were born there and people could actually use and spin things up and actually get things started really, really quickly.
And you'll find a lot of that. So we've got, all the Terraform stuff. We've got a whole bunch of Ansible Galaxy or Ansible collections now. We've got Vagrant boxes. We've got I'm going through a whole number of them for developer adoption because that's part of my job. But the amount of effort it'll take you to spin up the resources you need, we want to make that as little as possible. We want you to push a button and have all the resources you want. So whether you're going to use Terraform, whether you're going to use Ansible, whether you're going to use Packer was the other one, and Vagrant and all those sorts of things, we are trying to provide as many of the build templates or build scripts or build structures, whatever the term is. We're trying to do that as much as possible. If there's one that we're missing, let us know so that we can try and build that as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of other projects I've been working recently. Coherence, Community Edition. I actually saw Gerald actually has an open source link. We can definitely share it with people to make sure that get access to a lot of these things and get started with those. Probably the one thing that I will finish this off in. What do you think in terms of all the things that you've seen and looking at some of the subjects there? What do you think would be a couple of those tools that you think that people should use?
All of them. Hackathons are interesting. I'm joining this as somebody who doesn't know much about your goal, about how to achieve the goals for the hackathon. So my role as a mentor is going to be, you tell me what you need and I'll tell you how to get it. The tools you should use are the ones you're most familiar with, because it means your ramp up time is that much slower. It should be the ones that your team knows. It should be the ones that have an active community. It should be the ones that perform enough of the function that gets you busy, because they're open source. You can manipulate them after the fact. You can add functionality or modify the output or do anything you want once you've got it. But there was a phrase, I'm gonna munge this, but there was a phrase that the hardest goal or the hardest race is the one you never start. You have got a very limited amount of time once the hackathon starts and once you're supposed to deliver a product. If you spend 8-9 hours waffling over whether you're going to use product A or product B, you've wasted 8 or 9 hours. We have a couple of core values at OCI or at Oracle Cloud, is that rapid improvement is one of them. Deliver now and deliver often. Get something bad working and then make it better, as opposed to spending hours trying to get the best. Just start building. And whether you start with something and you realize, I would rather, as I'm the kind of person that I would rather start with something, get 5 hours in and realize it's not going to work and pivot, than spend 5 hours trying to work out which of 6 things is going to work. Start with one, see if it works. If it fails, change it. But don't, analysis paralysis can waste way too much time. The other things, obviously, that I'm going to suggest is go to Oracle's GitHub account, github.com/Oracle, and look at our tools. They're probably going to work with Oracle Cloud quicker and faster. So if you've got something, if you see an integration with a tool, if you're choosing between 2 tools and you see an integration that we've got with one of them, go with that one first, because it's going to work faster. It's those sorts of decisions that you should make. I have a particular, if you're choosing between coding languages, pick the one your team is more familiar with, or the coder on your team is more familiar with, because that'll solve your problems faster. I'm a Node.js guy. Other people might be Python folks. I had to learn or relearn Go this week to fix a Go product. And that took me hours. Like for me to learn Go, it took me hours. Pick the one you're familiar with. We've got plugins and we've got SDKs for all of them. So you don't have to worry about which one you pick. We've got you covered. So pick the one that you like the most. Pick the one that has the best mascot. I don't know. So pick the one that's going to get you the results you need.
Fantastic.
Because, yeah.
Fantastic. I think that there's a fair amount of good information there, Avi, over that period of time, in terms of your experience, in terms of what you've seen, and a couple of good points there. I think the last one there, in terms of, we do need to be making sure that execution through this process is on the ball.
Yep.
So wasting time on things on decisions that don't necessarily matter.
Yep.
Then just get in there and do it. I do preface what you say is probably more on the tech stack.
Yes.
There is probably some research side in terms of, before you get started, in terms of not necessarily the tech, but the problem. Right.
Absolutely.
So making sure that you actually solve the right problem there, not necessarily.
And on that note, don't let your tech person, whoever she or he is, or they are, don't let them guide how your solution works. For the data scientists, for the modelers, for the UX people, for all of the folks who are going to make this human, you decide the humanity of it. The tech person will build, on the tech people should build what the result has to be, but don't let the result, I always get annoyed because UX comes last, and it should come first, particularly in a hackathon like this. The kinds of problems that you're going to get, or the challenges you're going to be given, these are human challenges. So they need human responses that are fed by tech, not tech that are trying to solve human problems. So that's my last bit of advice for you.
Thank you, Avi. Thank you for spending the time here. It's much appreciated.
You are welcome.
So you'll be here over the weekend?
I will. I will be here. I will be trying to mentor. I hope I do a good job. So yes,
I'm sure you'll be fine. I'm sure you'll be fine. And we'll definitely share a couple of those links that we've sort of referred to in terms of GitHub. There's live labs where there's stuff that we could actually people can learn really easily. Some of that's actually aligned to some of the things that you talked about there in terms of open source frameworks.
Totally.
So we'll share all that stuff in there. So appreciate your time, Avi.
You're welcome.
Appreciate everyone joining. So
thank you.
Have fun.
Thank you.